All right, we are back for the second episode of our Compose Along series, and we're writing a piece called Lydia's Music Box. If you haven't seen the first episode, go ahead and watch that. The idea is that you can compose along with me, and I'm trying to break down step by step what I'm doing, and then you can integrate it into a piece of your own. So let's listen to what we have so far, and then we'll go from there. Okay, I think we're off to a great start on this piece. I did notice one thing. I've been singing this differently since we last worked on it. I've been singing this A and this G as a G and an F. So I'm just going to go ahead and change that so that it's the way I've been hearing this. All right, let's continue on and work on our next 8 bars. Since I'm considering this A section to be 16 bars, this is not the end of our phrase, rather this is the end of the phrase. So this is where I'm aiming. I'm going to use that same trick that we've used before and take this rhythm and go ahead and paste it in here. Then I'll lock that rhythm and change all those notes to the tonic again. I'm just after the rhythm here. Now I'll go ahead and assign some melodic notes to this rhythm. Now this is just one way to do it. Many times you write the melody first or the chords first or both together. This is just the way we're doing it this time. I'm hearing this go on to an F sharp. Let's back up a few measures and listen to this continuation of our melody in context, and then see what chords we might use to harmonize it. All right, starting on this E, let's pick out some chords. Now we've come from C major, one of our tonic chords, so let's go to one of our subdominant chords here. Looking at our chord palette, we have 2 chords that we could pick from the subdominant region, the 2 minor chord or the 4 major chord. Let's see how those work with this melody. We'll start by trying the 2 minor chord, the D minor chord. So here's our D minor chord, D, F, and A. And over the top of that in the melody, we would have the E, which is the 9. We'd have the F, which is the 3rd of our chord. We'd have the G, which is the 11th of our chord. The A, which is the 5th of our chord. Then the B, which is the 13th. That would make this a D minor 6. And then we'd have the C, the minor 7th. So it would sound like this. And all of those notes work really well. Now we'll try the second chord from the subdominant section, our F major chord, and I'll just play that in root position like I did the D minor chord. So here's our F major chord in root position, and our melody notes would be an E, which would be the major 7, then the F, which is the root of the chord, then the G, which is our 9, the A, which is our 3rd, then the B, which is our sharp 11, that sharp 11 sound that we like. So that's nice. And then the C, which would be the 5th. So all of that works really well, and it would sound like this. I think I'll pick the F major chord for this. I really like that B natural, the Lydian note, and I'm just going to put this into second inversion using our waltz rhythm. Now for this next chord, we have a G and an E in the melody. So I think it says to pick something from the tonic region. We have chords with those 2 notes in them. Let's try the E minor. We haven't used that yet. Let's just give that a try. Let's listen to that. It's fairly short, so I'm going to go back to the beginning just so we can get some perspective. I think that's okay, but it feels a little weak to me. I like the E minor sound, but that movement from the F major to the E minor, I think we could do something more there to make it stronger. So let me put up the chords that we have now and let's see what we can do to improve this. Here we have the F major chord for 2 measures and then the E minor. So now looking in the measure before our E minor chord, we have an F major chord with that B on top to give us the Lydian sound and the C. And as nice as that Lydian sound is, it's kind of a weak resolution to go from the F to the E minor. We can make that a lot stronger if we use something called a secondary dominant, which means that we're going to have a dominant functioning chord going to the E minor. When you pick a secondary dominant chord to go to a minor chord, you start with that minor chord's harmonic minor scale, and then build a dominant chord on the 5th degree of that scale. So here we have E minor as our target chord, so we'll pick our dominant chord from the E harmonic minor scale, which is E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, D sharp, and E. To build our secondary dominant or 5 chord from that E harmonic minor scale, we count up 5 notes from the root, E, F sharp, G, A, B, and then we build the chord in thirds using notes from our E harmonic minor scale. So B, D sharp, F sharp, A, and then it's also common to include this flat 9 in the chord symbol when you're going to a minor chord. And it works out very nicely because we have that flat 9, the C, right in the melody here. I'm going to go ahead and take this out and then just label this chord as our B7 flat 9. And now that we have our secondary dominant, our B7 flat 9, going to E minor, this would be our 5 of 3 now. So we could put the related 2 chord to this 5 chord back in this measure. And to build that chord, we would go to the 2nd degree now of our E harmonic minor scale, which would be F sharp, and we'd build the chord in thirds from there. The notes would be F sharp, A, C, and E, which would be an F sharp minor 7 flat 5. I do see a problem here now that we've changed our chord. We do have our 2 to 5 to 1 in a minor key, but the problem is that these melody notes don't all work with this F sharp minor 7 flat 5. The one note that doesn't work with our chord scale for this chord is this F natural. That'll have to be changed to an F sharp. Now let's also take this old accompaniment out and replace it with the chords from our new accompaniment. So using the same left-hand pattern that we have been using, I'll put in the F sharp minor 7 flat 5, so an F sharp on the downbeat, followed by the 3rd and the 5th. And it works out very nicely that in the melody we have the E natural, the minor 7th of the chord. Now for our B7 flat 9, I'm going to start on that F sharp, the 5th of the B7 flat 9, just to make a nice line going from the F sharp now down to the E in the next measure on the downbeat, and then I'll play the rest of the chord on beats 2 and 3. All right, let's take a listen to this and see if this new F sharp minor 7 flat 5 to B7 flat 9 to E minor is a stronger progression than what we had previously. Yes, that's definitely better. Not only is it stronger with that B7 flat 9 and it's related to the F sharp minor 7 flat 5, tonicizing that E minor for a moment with the 2-5 progression. It's just a more satisfying and pleasing progression, and it adds a lot of interest to this. Okay, let's move on and finish off this A section. We're coming to the end of our 16-bar phrase, And in this style of music, and most styles of music, we know that we're going to probably end this on the 1 chord. So let's go ahead and put in our harmony there. And to get to that 1 chord, we're probably going to have some sort of dominant chord going to our 1 chord. So the obvious choice here would be our 5 chord. So I'll go ahead and put that in now in first inversion. Now we just have to figure out the harmony for these 2 measures. This F sharp that I was hearing in the melody leads me to believe that this is going to be a D7 chord, a secondary dominant leading to our 5 chord. So it would be considered the 5 of 5. To construct a secondary dominant leading to a major chord, we'd do it the same way that we did leading to the minor chord, except we would use the target chord's major scale. So here we have a G major chord. We would use the G major scale, count up 5 notes to the D, and then build a chord in thirds from that D. That would be D, F sharp, A, and C, a D dominant 7 chord. And I'll go ahead and label these chords just so that we have it. This is the D7 chord, the 5 of 5, leading to our G chord, the 5 chord. And then finally closing out the phrase back home on the C chord, our 1 chord. Now we have just this measure to fill. So what could bridge the gap between this D7 and G? A chord that might fit quite nicely in this spot is something called an augmented sixth chord. I know when I was first learning about these chords, I was kind of intimidated by them because there's different versions of these chords and the theory behind them, how they're constructed, can be confusing. But I think we can simplify that down. So let me just play you what these chords would be. The 3 main versions of the augmented sixth chord are the Italian augmented sixth chord, the German augmented sixth chord, I've added this E flat, and the French augmented sixth chord. This one I've added the D. Now, you might have noticed when I played the German augmented sixth chord, you might have said, well, that's just an A flat 7 chord. And if that's an A flat 7 chord you're putting in the measure before the G chord, then that would be considered the sub 5 of 5. That's how you would analyze that in jazz harmony. And if that's the way you want to think of it, then that's absolutely fine to do it that way. I'm going to consider this an augmented sixth, mainly because of the way that I'm going to resolve the voices, the voice leading of this chord. So you'll notice that the top note of this augmented sixth chord is spelled as an F sharp, not a G flat. So you can see here we have this A flat 7, but here it's an augmented sixth because we have this augmented sixth interval between these 2 voices. And the way that these 2 voices resolve to the G chord is the F sharp resolves up to the G and the A flat resolves down to the G. So you have this kind of motion. Now I'm going to choose the French augmented sixth here, and I should also note that these nationalities that are assigned to the different augmented sixth chords are just random. It doesn't mean that this was used in France or the other one was used in Germany or the other one was used in Italy. I do like the sound of this French one. It does make me think of the French Impressionists because of this kind of whole tone scale that it outlines. So, we have this as the sound, so you could hear that sound in it. So I'm going to pick this French augmented sixth, which I think really works well with our story. There's a little bit of a mysterious sound, a magical sound to it. And the resolution of this French augmented sixth moving to our G chord would be like this, with the outer voices moving to the tonic of the chord, the D would stay on a D, and the C would move down to a B. So it would sound like this. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and put the chord name above here. I'll put both chord names, the A flat, 7 flat 5, and then also label it a French augmented sixth. Now that we've figured out these chords, I'm going to try to voice this left hand part a little bit better. And then I want to lead down to the A flat in the next measure, so I'm going to put the A in the bass here. Now the root of the chord on the downbeat, and the rest of the chord on beats 2 and 3. And now the outer voices of our French augmented sixth are going to resolve outward. So I'm going to put octave Gs on the downbeat, and then fill in the 5th and the 3rd of the chord so that D will stay on the same note and that C will move down by a half step. Now I'll fix the enharmonic spelling on this G sharp just to reflect that that's actually an A flat. Let's take a listen to the second 8 bars and this newly modified chord progression. The second 8 bars of our A section are working really well now. That French augmented sixth just added this sense of whimsy and magic, and it really fits our story. I can imagine if I were to orchestrate this, I would play that up with some whole tone flourishes. All right, let's figure out what the melody is going to be for these last 4 bars as we close out the phrasing for this A section. On the French augmented sixth or A flat 7 flat 5 chord, I really want to accentuate the raised fourth between the A flat and the D. So that would be a really good melody note to start with here. It really gives me that sound I'm after. Let's try adding the melody starting with that D note, and we'll use the same rhythm we've been using. I see an opportunity here to add a fun little pickup because we have the D and C of this measure available here as 8th notes. So I'm just going to try that. Yeah, that's kind of nice. And finally, I'm just going to extend this note a couple of beats here. All right, let's listen to all of that from the beginning. I'm very happy with how our A section has turned out. Not only is it interesting to listen to, but it tells our story of an older woman who's opened a music box, and as that tune starts to play, her memories bring her back to a time when she was a young girl in her room dancing to the same tune of this music box. So let's move on to the B section here. And it's very common to start a B section with the 4 chord. So I say, let's do that. Let's start the next section with the 4 chord, the F major chord. We'll start by adding 16 bars for our B section, the same length as our A section. Since we started the A section by coming up with a melody and then harmonizing it, let's go the other way here. Let's start with the chord progression and then write a melody to that. So I'm going to start with a really simple chord progression here, starting with our F major chord, and I'll just play that in. So here's F major. And then we'll go to C major, all in root position. And then to the 5 chord, G major. And then back to C major. And then do the same exact thing again. And I'll label these chords so we can easily see them. Just because this chord progression is, quote, simple, and yes, it's been used thousands and thousands of times over the years, it doesn't mean that it doesn't have value and that you shouldn't use it. My idea for this section is that our dancer is starting to really become enveloped by the joy of the moment and losing herself in that. So this string of major chords really has this happy feel to it. And I think there's a comfort in a chord progression like this, where the listener knows exactly where it's going to go. We're going to add the motion and emotion in the melody. Now that we have the chord progression, I would encourage you to use this exact same chord progression for your B section of your piece. Don't worry, you're not stealing anything. This thing, like I said, has been used thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of times. So the idea here is to practice singing a melody over the top of a chord progression that you already have. Now there are certain notes to avoid, and on major chords, it's that note a half step above the third. So on the F major chord, the third is the A, so you don't want to sit on a B flat or hang a B flat there. But you could use the Lydian note, you could use a B natural, and that would go along with what we're working on. On the C, we have an E as the third, so you wouldn't want to sing that note a half step above the E. The F, you wouldn't want to hang on that in your melody, but you could put it as an F sharp. Again, our Lydian sound. The G, same thing. The B is the third. You don't want to sit on a C natural, but you could use the C sharp. So go ahead and practice singing over this and come up with some sort of melody. I'm going to go ahead and play it from the beginning and then just sing over these new chords, and we'll come back and I'll show you what melody I've written and you can compare it to what you've done. And of course, this isn't a race. Play this over as many times as you need and sing that melody until you get it just how you want it, and then write it down. I've finished my melody for the B section, and I hope you had great success with your melody. Let's take a look at what I've done, and then we'll go back and listen to it. In this B section, I really wanted to have that feeling of the dancer losing herself in the moment, losing herself in the moment of joy. So I wanted to have some faster moving rhythms. That's why I have this eighth note triplet here. Here you'll see this B natural, that Lydian note we talked about, and it resolves up a half step to the C. Again, on this C chord, we have that sharp 11, that Lydian note, the F sharp, and once again, it resolves up a half step to the G. And then same thing here on the G chord, we've got the C sharp resolving up a half step to the D. So that's really become part of the language of the piece. At the end of each 4-bar phrase, you'll see I've got a held note. I wanted to leave some room, if I ever were to orchestrate this, to have other moving lines. So let's go ahead and listen to this. And we'll go back after we listen and talk about any ways that we might be able to improve this, or if it's fine just the way it is, and maybe there will be some ideas you can use in your B section. So I'll just back up a few bars here to give us a running start, and we'll take a listen to this. I'm happy with that. I think that's a very successful B section. The one thing I might want to do is inject a little bit more movement into it, but because I may orchestrate this in the future, I think those held notes are a good place where I could do that. So I think I'll leave them for now, but there are a few spots I want to look at. One of them is right here. There's no pickup note to launch us into bar 17. And since we have an F here on bar 17, I think I'm just going to put a pickup, again, that half step resolution upward. So I'm going to put an E natural here. And because this is a C major chord leading to our F major chord, it already is the 5 of 4, a secondary dominant. To make that a little bit stronger, I can add the B flat into the voicing on this last beat so that we have that tritone between the E and the B flat. It'll just make it a stronger resolution to the F chord. And then we'll label that our secondary dominant chord, the C7, which would be the 5 of 4. And since we've done that here, we can do the exact same thing here, leading to this F chord. And we'll just use that exact same voicing. And again, I'll label this C7. Okay, I think that is enough for today. We finished off our A section. We got a brand new B section. I think we need one more section for this piece to be complete. And I got some great news. One of my good friends is going to be here in town, and he's this incredible jazz piano player and a composer himself, and he said he would stop by and play a jazz version of this piece. So I'll be making what's called a lead sheet for him once I finish this piece, and we'll get to hear him perform this in a jazz piano style. So that should be really exciting. I hope to see you all next time, and I hope that you're writing your pieces and that they're coming out great. So we'll listen to this one more time on the way out, and I'll see you all next time.